I would like to entertain a motion to.
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second? Miles, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, agenda approved. Go to section 4, approval of the minutes from December 4th, 2013. I guess printing those off. It's a long meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from December 4th, 2013.
So moved.
JD so moved. Is there a second? Derek second. All in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. All right, motion passes. Move on to section 5, reports. I have nothing to report, so hope everyone had a good break. And I'm excited to get this quarter going. We have 2 quarters left, so it'll be nice. And it's gonna be a good quarter for all of us. That's my report. By you, Sharon.
I do.
All right.
A couple quick items. The supplemental funding requests that we have approved so far, everything has gone through the Budget and Finance Committee now. We only have one remaining one that still will go to the Board of Trustees, and that's the one for the RAD program, but the Budget and Finance Committee did recommend that move forward as well. So I'm just waiting for that final one. Other than that, we have dispersed funds, and then I have one other. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but I'm one of the members that sits on the board for the CERC Partners, which is for this entire building. And so it's co-managed by the different groups, Dining Services, the Wildcat Shop, the Rec Center, and the Student Union Building. And then as the financial advisor, I sit on it. They are putting together a winter quarter event for students, and this would be for a theme that they're considering is Mardi Gras, a toned down version of Mardi Gras. But what we're really looking for is for students who would be interested in that planning session and stuff, so that we can ensure that we're meeting what the students would like to see for that winter sessions kind of break and something within the building. So anybody that is interested in participating and help with planning and working with that event, if you could send me an email, I'll make sure that you get included in meetings. And that's the last one.
All right, thank you. A second. All right, at this time, I'd like to move to section 6, public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? All right, seeing none, we'll move to section 7, supplemental funding requests. We do have one request today. Request number 1407, CCLP cohort is requesting $9,900. So welcome to the floor.
Do you want your PowerPoint up, or do you want your request up?
We'll put up a PowerPoint.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, everybody, for having us back again. We are resubmitting for our cross-cultural leadership program. So I'd like to start off by saying I had our last meeting here. I know I ran out of here kind of quickly, so I had an event that night, and so I'm sorry if it seemed like I was rushing out of here, but that was taking place, and so. And then I also recognized that there were some budget questions, and I got very immersed in the details, and so I'm sorry for that. Hopefully this time I can be more clear, and if you have any questions, I invite you to ask them. Hopefully I can clarify those too when I clarify those too. But yeah, we are resubmitting for the cross-cultural leadership project. It's an immersion project that we are implementing in this over spring break with 11 students. Next slide for us.
And also before, I'd like to apologize. I have a meeting usually right after this at 6, but now it's going to change. So I'm not I was in a hurry also. So the cross-cultural leadership program, if you guys recall, which you can do a quick refresher. We're a group of 11 students who meet bi-weekly, and we take the GLOBE study and we analyze it, and we have different professors across the whole campus come and talk to us about their experience, their leadership and their culture experience, and they kind of compare what the GLOBE study has presented to us. They compare that and say, yeah, this is kind of true, this isn't true. This year our goal is to go to El Salvador, and we will be doing three projects to volunteer and get to know the community members along with some other stuff. And that will take place in March 23rd to the 29th.
And so with our supplemental funding request, this is just a refresher. We had our 4 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. And so the CCLP cohort is, like Len said, we're 11 students coming together to meet and go over our GLOBE study. Our trip is intended to go to El Salvador, where we're going to be working on a service learning project that is learning about the relationship of leadership and culture through service projects and then other meetings we set up while we're there. It's taking place in El Salvador, and it is over spring break. That's 23rd of March through the 29th.
Some highlights are the service projects that we did go over. There were 4 that we're hopefully going to be able to do. Is one, work with like the school children, help build the school there. And then another will be working with farmers, teaching them how to plant and kind of how to live off the land type of thing, while also learning their agriculture. And then working with local families is another one. The cool thing is the light bulbs. There's a chemical formula, which I'm not sure, that you put in a 2-liter bottle that can power a 60-watt light bulb. It's in a 2-liter bottle, which will be kind of cool for our students to know. We'll dip a little bit into chemistry. Our notable meetings will be meeting government officials. We'll be going to the Museum of Archbishop Romeo Chapel and El Salvador history testimonials. We're actually going to see where he was shot, which is kind of cool to see because that's a huge part of El Salvador's history.
The way this is going to impact Central is we have a plan of, well, not only our direct impact of our 11 students who will interact with their various networks around campus, but we have a spring program where we intend to present at Source about our experiences. We did this last year in our cross-cultural leadership trip. And then we are also planning on presenting to various departments and groups around Central that help us find people for the members for the cross-cultural leadership program.
Learning outcomes. Well, we're hoping that will increase our culture awareness of the El Salvadorian culture and learning from community leaders in El Salvador and engaging in service learning opportunities. We'll be speaking with the locals. We'll get to know a little bit more about the language and kind of their slang style of it. We also have been putting a lot of effort towards understanding different cultures and leaderships through this whole quarter, so it's kind of just expanding our knowledge of the GLOBE study to see maybe where those researchers had got their ideas, so you can see the how behind the project.
And this is copied and pasted out of our supplemental funding request. And so there's 2 sections. There's this top section that is SNA applicable, and then this bottom section, which is we're not requesting money for that. Up here, our funding, we have our airfare, which is being covered by the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement. And we are requesting money from SNA to cover both our study abroad processing fee, which the state brought, even though we have a fee through them, this isn't a credit-bearing project. And then we also have our in-country cost, which is the large portion. That totals to $9,900. Outside of our funds that we're requesting from SNA, we have other funds that are being raised for our projects, and then just our personal funds, so our entry visas and that sort of thing. And that totals over $10,000, which we are raising through fundraisers and through personal funds.
Okay, thank you. Does the committee have any questions at this time?
Jacob, I have a question.
Yes, Ashley?
Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Ashley.
Now, could you please go into a little bit of detail about what the requirements are for these students to attend, what criteria they have to meet, and what qualifies them to attend?
Yeah, so the Center for Leadership and Community Engagement is the founding organization of this group, and they ask for submissions from various departments and or groups from around campus where professors pick students that they think exemplify people who would fit or be a great fit for learning about the relationship of culture and leadership. And in this year's case, the 5 cultural competencies which we're studying.
And they also have to attend the bi-weekly meeting that we have for the CCLP to analyze the flow study. That is a requirement of all students participating in this program.
Okay. Does that clarify your question, Ashley?
It does, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? John?
Are any of the 11 students in paid student leadership positions?
As far as coordination of the trip,
I mean, the 11 students are student leaders, right?
Mhm.
Are any of them being paid to be student leaders?
not while we are abroad.
But on campus, are they paid?
On campus, Lana and myself are coordinating the trip.
No, we're the only students that are
But we,
involved.
yeah, and we differentiate ourselves between, so when we meet and we're learning, we are not paid during that time, only when we are in the office and planning our meetings.
Any further questions? JD?
So you talked about fundraising, and maybe I was taking notes and I missed it. So how much, and you have fundraising / personal funds. How much of this is planned to be done by fundraising, and how much is planned to be done by personal funds?
We are trying to reach the 100% with fundraising, and so, but whatever if we fall short by a considerable amount, we would need to look at options that we may not do the largest service project available to us, but we've raised enough to where we will do at least 2, and we're working towards more service projects from that point on. And personal funds, it's most likely that students will need to supplement that, will need to provide some personal funds.
That, and my understanding of that is that whole bottom half is not SNA applicable
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. This is all self-supporting.
Okay, and then I have one more question. So in your application, you mentioned the term service learning. Can you elaborate on what all that includes?
Yeah, that would depend first on how much we raise for our service projects.
Okay, I think this is like what are you talking about when you say service learning? Are you talking about how to do community service? Are you talking about what it's like to be in community service? What exactly is the end goal of service learning?
It's a corporation of both. Service learning is something that our center mainly does, but what we're trying to do when we're over in El Salvador is to give them the idea of hands-on volunteering we will probably be volunteering with the local El Salvadorians. So we'll get that experience on a local level, but it's through service that, like, I can testify because I volunteer a ton, but through that service learning, it's where you volunteer to learn like the different leadership traits by watching and observing, but you're experiencing it as a volunteer and yet as a leader.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
that makes sense.
Any further questions? Connie?
I wanted to expand on what Jay was just talking about, because I was reading the 2 in-service programs that you're going to do while you're there. You're there for, is it 6 days?
Yes.
So, but there were only 2 that were listed here as far as ones that you knew that you were going to be involved in. One have light bulbs and the other have more solar lights, I apologize. And one says working with farmers in two rural villages. So I was wondering, is there gonna be more in service than that?
Well,
'Cause that seems,
No, I understand your question. If we are able to raise the funding for the schooling, we'll be able to perform it. We are going through Study Abroad and they plan the whole process, so it will be like a little bit of switching on our dates through Edna, I believe? ESNA, sorry. That is the Study Abroad program that we're going through. And so we believe that we can at least compensate those two. Our big goal is to compensate the school, but that one is the larger of the proportion of the fundraising, and so we want to make sure we at least do two, but our goal is to get all three. And so if we are able to reach it, it's kind of planning, a pre-ahead planning, if that makes sense.
I think I'm beginning to understand, so you actually have to cover the cost with solar lights, and is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
I see. So you're not just assisting, you're actually
Yeah, we're
providing
covering-
funding for those particular projects?
Yes.
I gotcha.
So that is like that was our goal, is like being fundraisers, is that's what we want to do. That was our main goal, to focus on that area so we can get that more of a in-depth service learning experience while we're at El Salvador, if that makes sense, with the volunteers.
That clarifies it.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the committee?
Jacob, I have two questions.
Go ahead, Ashley.
The first is, how many of these 11 students have traveled abroad with this community service program before?
I believe none.
None?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, then actually, I don't need to ask the second question then. Thank you.
Any further questions? Last call. Okay, I think that's all we need, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for
very
your
much.
time.
Appreciate it. All right. With that, we move on to section 8, old business. We're going to be discussing the base funding year-end reports. That's you, correct, Sharon?
Yes, it is. So, and I probably should have brought the list with me. There's approximately 4 of our providers. Okay, you might have a list with you. So with each year, we provide funding in our base funding for the different programs. They are required per our SNA policy to provide an annual report back. So we have 2 types of reporting. One is the annual report that's due December 1st. And that's more of just a high level, here's the money we received, here is by category what it was spent on. They have the opportunity to provide additional information at that time if they want, and we also post that at the time, but you're not required to. It's more, and there's a couple explanation sections so that we can see that yes, they're operating the program in a manner of which we funded. So an example would be if we funded the art gallery and they decided instead of using those funds at the art gallery, they decided to open up a diner to teach students, I don't know, I'm just trying to give you a bizarre. So it's to keep them accountable and to keep us informed and the public informed. Then at a more detailed level, we invite them to come present to SNA, and that's where they really get into a lot of details about their program. So you get to learn about the program more and see as well that they are presenting and utilizing the money in a manner in which they asked to receive it. So with that said, there are, I want to say, there are 4 or 5 of our program areas that did not submit their annual reports. And continued funding through SNA, this is one of the items that if they do not submit their annual reports, contingency of continued funding is part of the requirement. I want to, I think it was Monastash, Theater Arts,
Yes.
the Art Gallery.
Those were the 3 that I know for sure.
3. And there might be a 4th one. And so instead of, I talked about it with Joey and I said, you know, instead, we should not be the ones that make a decision on how we handle this, it should come to the committee, which is why we're discussing it here tonight. You know, what do we want to do? We can send them a letter saying you have within a week to get this in, it's a requirement, or your future funding could be, I'm just throwing out ideas. Please don't take them as this is what Sharon thinks you need to do. But you could say that you're not eligible to request additional funds for supplemental or base. Maybe you want to say if they don't submit it, then, you know, a 2% reduction in their base funding or whatever. But really, it should come before the committee to decide how they want to deal with that. But I do think that because December is a highly flexing time, people's schedules, that I would at least say that a letter to say, please get your annual report in, or there could be additional ramifications might be prudent, but in order to continue with building relationships and stuff, we do need to, at a minimum, at least put them on notice.
Derek and Connie.
So we know 3 of the 5 right now.
Of all of our program areas, and there's a lot.
I know.
There's approximate, I know 3 for sure that have not, and I think there might be a 4th one. Richard's looking it up. So we really wanted to bring it to the committee, so it's a committee decision and not an advisor decision, because it really is the committee that allocates the funding, if that makes sense.
So isn't the, sorry to.
No, that's right.
So isn't the amount that we gave them contingent on this report? So it's not that they would lose future funding, it's that they would lose funding they've already received.
Well, how we decide to deal with it, but their future funding would, the way I would interpret it would be like next year's base funding could be affected, or future funding requests. But I don't want to give that information without, because we've really never had this issue before. I want the committee to think for themselves. I just want to bring the issue up.
Connie and then Todd.
Well, I had 2 questions kind of following up. First, you just could have answered one. This has never happened before.
This is the first time.
Have they been sent a reminder or in case there was the holiday issue? Because Monastic, I think that's Monastic has had funding in the past.
Correct.
I'm assuming they want to continue that. So
They
maybe send
received
them a reminder.
multiple emails.
Okay. My thought is if the funding is actually contingent on the report and everybody else is held to that standard, they need to be held to that standard too.
Todd.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can attest, at least for the gallery and theater, that things got a little crazy at the end of December. A lot of things that we do put on the departments. I mean, it very well could be that it had to be put on the back burner. I'm going to see those 2 tomorrow, and I'll get those reports to you. But I mean, I know, like, for example, theater's been getting for several years. They never miss.
Right. They sat on this committee.
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I think I can get at least those 2. And then the other point is that if it could come back to me. Yeah, I think. Yeah. This is the last of the quadrennium. This is the last of the 4 years.
Year 1.
So this is year 1 as of
July.
July. None of those were using.
And the committee could come up with, maybe to give some less harsh examples. And again, like I said, these are examples. I'm not trying to recommend one solution over another. You can put them on notice that if they're late next year, then, they have a week to do, and if they don't get in there a week that you want to affect you know, July 1's funding. I think of the stabilization of the programs, but yet people need to be held accountable, and how the committee decides to do it is.
Hey, Jacob.
Yeah. 1 second.
I think that something to consider in an age of technology is the power that can be gained from the hard copy of a letter. If someone were to receive a hard copy statement rather than an email. You know, because Sharon mentioned that numerous emails have been sent and so on and so forth. So that might be something to consider, you know, if we do draft a letter saying that consequences might be taken, and if it's not turned in by a certain date, it could be taken more seriously if it's a hard copy.
Okay. Derek and then Connie.
Could we just really just start out by saying, I mean, let me ask this question. Have we gotten responses from these communiques, or just, okay, so it's not just that they haven't sent what we need, it's that they haven't even, they ignored us basically, for the most part.
Well, I can't say what their intent was to ignore us. Or they
Okay,
got
but
busy.
effectively they have ignored us.
We received no response.
Okay, so I think that wouldn't it be possible to just start from the very beginning, which is to say, we need to have a response in the next 3 days, or there's going to be consequences.
The committee can choose to handle it however they wish to handle
Okay.
I know coming from the BOD aspect, I got that email that, you know, it's due, turn it in. And I mean, there's several. So it's not like it was just one email and then
Yeah.
expecting to get on the state. There was constant
It
reminders.
might be that they need to take 2 weeks or something, like, you know, like you sent an email and the person who was supposed to be in charge of it is, I don't know, dead or whatever, and they can't respond to it, but at least send them something saying, if you need to contact us. You need to talk to us right now.
Okay.
I mean, it may be that you need a month or a week to actually create this thing, but we need to have a dialogue starting now.
it. And maybe we want to tell them they need to present it formally to the committee, saying, here is my report, versus just being able to send it to Joy and myself and Kate by email, so that they're actually required to come in and hand it in. I don't know, I'm just trying to give you guys some examples.
I think a hard copy letter, like Ashley suggested, and they have 10 days, or there's going to be a penalty, like a 2.5% decrease on their funding for the next year. Because I did that document, it took me about 30 minutes to type up. It's not a long document.
And I will say that I offered, just as I offered with all of our areas, to provide the numbers so that all they needed to do was put in the description of what they were doing and stuff, so they were not asked to even, if they needed help.
Okay, so we're going to go. Did you guys still have a question, Connie? That would be your next.
No, I was just gonna concur with whatever, I would have the letter from the committee with a deadline, like you stated, 10 days. I don't know that I would have them come present, but I don't know that I would attach a penalty to it unless they didn't get it within that period of time, but I think it would be a mistake not to enforce that requirement.
Yeah, we have to draw the line
So you
somewhere.
do.
We give them
Yes,
so many
we-
reminders, we're giving
yeah.
them 10 more days.
There's no reason that they shouldn't. That's a requirement for the funding, and it's no different than any other requirement out there for federal funding or anything else.
Exactly.
It comes with a requirement that you have to meet.
Yeah. JD and Sarah.
I think I agree with what your proposed idea, the giving them this set amount of time in the letter. I also think that it would be important to add in something saying like, this will not, you know, I'm trying to think of the correct wording on the fly here, but it's, you know, this will be documented, and come the next quadrennium when we start talking about base funding, this could potentially affect your base funding, you know, at the next time. And, you know, because, you know, even if you give them 10 days, you know, 10 days is a lot of time. 10 days, you know, and especially if it's business days, you know, that's a lot of time that people are waiting around, sitting, you know. I mean, you get those reports directly. You're waiting 2 weeks on those, and that's a lot of wasted time that, you know, she could have done something else with her time. So I think that making it so that it's more serious with the quadrennium, like in the base funding, they won't be so okay. It's okay if I miss the deadline, I still have 10 more days, because
Yeah.
then all you've effectively done is push the deadline back 10 days, and then what happens next year when we have to push the deadline back another 10 days, and pretty soon we're getting end of year reports in April, So
Yeah.
I think if we put it there, so if this is gonna happen once, we gotta talk about base funding in the next 4 years.
Can you add me to the list, please?
What was that?
Will you add me to the list, please?
Yeah, Sarah.
I'm not familiar with the actual language in the, whatever paperwork or policies that are, so I'm just curious what it says, just to say groups who receive base funding are required to submit an annual report, and that's,
December 1st, it has to.
okay, so that's the extent of the language, there's no nothing about if they don't, or consequences. It's
Yes,
just
it
they're
does say
required
that
to.
there are consequences that will can affect their future funding, and so yes, there's a date, says there's consequences are listed, but the exact A, B, C, or D, it's more up to the committee to determine what those.
So there's a list of potential consequences.
No, there's
I'm
not.
saying it just says it can affect their future funding.
Oh, okay,
So-
all right, so it's just
So,
open.
And it does state that in the letter along with the offer of assistance if we need.
Did
well,
you-
with that said, I almost feel like, and this might be a little harsh, and then Ashley, I'll get to you after this. There should be an immediate, smaller penalty. They have multiple warnings, and if these groups know, oh, they're going to give me 10 days if I don't get it in, then they're going to wait until the last minute, and there's going to be the precedent that we did give them 10 days. So maybe it's almost an immediate. I'm guessing about this, like 2%, and if they don't get it in, it's another 1.5% hit. I mean, you can't. We gave them warning after warning. I remember sharing these emails because I waited till the last minute. I'm a procrastinator. They were like, "Get this in. There's going to be a hit." Got it in November 31st, but it was the 1st. But if they know there's that 10 days, they're going to use that 10 days to their advantage. And I'll get to you, Ashley.
So here's,
An example of the extent of the report.
Then Ashley, did you have something?
Yes, I do.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
I move for Jacob to draft a letter to be approved by the committee advisors on behalf of our committee stating the following. That a report will be turned in by 5 p.m. of next Wednesday, January 15th. If this is not done, then requests by this organization may be declined for the rest of this calendar year, and funding may be decreased in future years. And we can decide next Wednesday, based on how many have not turned them in, what the penalty will be. But if they're all turned in, then that's a conversation that we don't need to have.
Okay. So currently the motion on the table is that I will draft a letter to these organizations that a report must be turned in by 5 p.m. Wednesday, January 15th. And if not done by that deadline, the request may be denied and future funding may be decreased, pending future committee decisions. Is that correct, Ashley?
That's correct. Thank
Okay.
you.
Is there a second?
Second. Go ahead.
Todd, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. All right, so I'll draft that letter. Here's your help. All right, thanks for that, Ashley. Derek, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a quick question on the people who haven't done it yet. Is there any way of finding out who those are, like by email, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, we do have the list. I just failed to bring it. My apologies. So yes, we can send that out to the committee.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. With that done, we'll move on to section 9, new business. Subsection A, increased base funding regarding classified staff and minimum wage.
Okay. So we'll start with classified staff and then we'll go to minimum wage. I want to say it was around the 1st of December, there was a mandatory payout to classified staff. This was a one-time payout. This, the budgeting process for SMA and people being able to request base funding was not, had already been complete before the Board of Trustees and negotiations finished this process that resulted in this one-time payout. So what I'm bringing to the committee is this was a mandatory payout that our programs were required to pay out that could negatively impact their programming funds and such unless the committee decides to reimburse them. This is very similar to the mandatory increases that happened that I came to you on the first or second meeting regarding exempt employees. Well, this is the side regarding the classified staff, except for this is a one-time payout. So this is not something that will continue every year without there being some type of Board of Trustee action. So the amount is $32,409.50 that we're looking to do one-time funding to the program areas to cover this unexpected cost that was a result of negotiations with the Board of Trustees and the administration and the employees. So I'm looking for some type of a motion to support the reimbursement to the programs.
Okay. Derek?
I would like to entertain that motion.
So moved. So moved by Miles. Is there a second? Sarah, second. Any discussion? John?
So I have two questions. This will come out of supplemental funding, is that correct? This will come out of the supplemental budget? And
You know, we could choose to say it would come out of supplemental funding, but we usually, when we do base funding and such, it's usually done in a manner that it, we don't take base funding out of supplemental. So I think the committee could choose to say we want to reduce our supplemental funding by the X number amount, or they could choose to have me just pay it out of our regular balance that we carry forward for unforeseen items.
Point of order, I'd like to recommend that whoever made the motion either clarify or a friendly amendment be made to clarify where the funding is going to come from.
Okay.
Who moved?
Miles?
Miles.
So it would be either from our operating reserves or from the supplemental funding, depending on how.
And the order would be, Ashley, just so you're aware, if you don't put a stipulation, it just comes from the base. So if that's where you wanted that, you don't have to amend that. You can just leave it where it is. If you do want it to come from your supplemental funding, then I would encourage you to amend that.
Do you want to keep your motion what it was? So
we can have the base funding?
yes.
Okay.
Derek?
I'd just like to say that I think that we shouldn't apply it to supplemental funding because that's not what supplemental funding is for.
Right.
No.
You mean apply to base funding?
That's what I'm saying, apply it to base funding.
Yeah.
It really is.
Oh,
It's
not to apply.
it's not a student thing,
Yeah.
it's just paying.
I feel like we should do it.
Okay, so currently the motion on the table that we will be voting on is motion for support of reimbursement. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes.
Okay, so the second component is not because of the Board of Trustees or negotiation with the administration, but this is a result of the Washington State minimum wage increase that started January. So traditionally, when we have supported the minimum wage increase. Let me shrink this down a little so you guys can see more of it. I can't see the note. So traditionally, SNA has supported minimum wage increases. There have been years in the past when financially it was difficult for SNA to meet this funding request. So it went a couple years, but when they did actually make the programs whole, they chose to go back those years that they had not made them whole, and they caught them up so that it was in fact funded totally. So just as a little history there. So the way I have calculated this consistently over the last few years is we've taken the student, and it is only for student payroll. We've taken what happened over the last year because we really don't know what is going to happen in the next 6 months. So we kind of use that as their programming base to take the rate of increase, and here it's 0.014 because it was 13 cents an hour. And so then we've applied it over the last full year's student wages that they had so that it would cover enough to do the rest of this year and up until next December. And then January again, we would look at, you look confused. Am I not explaining it well?
No. I think you are. I'm just wondering why Center for Leadership and Community Engagement has zeros on it.
Probably because their funding was in two separate
I see.
PIDs. And so when I'm looking at last year's, they would receive the funding from those two individual IDs that are now rolled into their new PID.
Now it's the Civic Engagement Center.
Right. So so here's the Civic Engagement Center, Voluntary Center, and then there's
It's leadership.
Yeah. So basically, to ensure that we did cover their costs, I took their two old PIDs because they were SNA funded PIDs, and now they're doing business under one PID to ensure that we were using the same metric as we have for the rest of the programs.
So basically, we're just trying to figure out how much we should give them that should account for basically what they're going to be going on for the next year.
Yes, traditionally, we've looked at the prior year's level of student employment and taken the increased percentage and have applied that for the increase for this year. There is a slight, because of the base funding with the CERC fixed funding, again, I went through the level that we support their student employees, and we applied it to those student employees that we support, and then took the same percentage we did the rest of all of the programs, so they're all treated the same. So it's a total of $14,143.23, and it's important for you to note that this is ongoing because the chance that the state's going to drop the minimum wage is probably not likely. So this would apply for next year as well, and depending on what the rate changes next year, we'll go through the same process.
So this is to increase the base funding of all of these programs by this amount to account for the increase in minimum wage. And so the actual is the total number of dollars basically spent on minimum wage over the last year, or minimum wage employees for the last
Yes.
year. Okay.
Multiplying it times the percent of the minimum wage increase.
Got it.
So rather than doing all the years at once, we're doing it year by year to reflect the most accurate number of hours of support
Yes,
workers.
and it also prevents any negative impact to the programs each year. Instead of having them running slim for 2 or 3 years and then trying to catch them up, well, they've already felt the effect in their programming because legally they have to pay minimum wage.
Oh, I was saying, rather than, because you just said that we would have to do this again next year, theoretically.
Right, once we know what the minimum wage increase is.
Yeah, we don't know what the increase, so as soon as we find out the increase in minimum wage, they run the numbers.
Do they increase in our budget every year?
Yep,
Most-
Washington
yeah.
State is based on the CPI.
From the south. I mean, Oregon's for a long time, so we don't do that.
You don't have any questions for Sharon?
So, and again, I would need a motion to be able to increase this funding. It's not something I would do automatically.
And can I recommend that anyone who's entertaining the motion or creating the motion, that you would say for the rest of the quadrennium to make sure that it's documented, that it's understood in that way. Does that make sense?
Uh-huh.
So for the next 4 funding cycles.
Okay.
3, thank you.
Derek?
I'd like to entertain a motion that the base funding be increased by the amount that Sharon has indicated for each year of the quadrennium remaining, and that it come out of the base funding and not supplemental funding.
Okay.
Second that.
John second. Any discussion?
I just entertain.
Oh, sorry. He entertained the motion.
I mean, we made the motion.
Entertained. So you'd move it.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, happy to move that.
Okay, John moved. Is there a second? Miles second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion passes.
You loser?
No, I'm here. Oh, yes.
Raising your hand.
I was just listening. I was just so happy. Sorry.
We thought you raised your hand.
Yeah.
There should be like a semaphore thing or something that indicates I.
Like if they push a button,
Yeah.
push 9 means aye.
Green is aye,
Yeah.
red is yellow is
All right.
abstain.
So we'll move on to subsection B, base funding program reviews.
Oh, that's right. Joey would probably talk about this, but I will talk about this. So we are starting to schedule the program reviews for the base funding. So earlier when I mentioned that there's 2 types of reporting our programs do. One is for the hard copy due December 1st. And then the second one is we take 1/3 of our funded programs each year, and then on the 4th year of our funding cycle, everybody comes back to ask for their funding to be renewed. So starting next week, we will have our first base funding presentation, and that's when they actually come to us and you get to know them a little bit more. They actually speak in a lot more depth about their program. You have the opportunity to ask questions. So we really encourage people to, if you want to get to know the program areas, that you engage the presenters so that they get to know us and you get to know them.
Can you email the list out to the committee? I know I got it, but I don't know if they did.
Yes, we can.
Just so we know ahead of time who
Yeah.
will be presenting.
And it's on the website schedule, right? I
Is it?
think I saw it.
Well, we can post it though. We'll work on that.
They did send it out. They did send out.
It seems like I read it, so I'm
Yeah.
not aware.
It was a while.
It got sent out on December 27th.
27th, yes.
Right.
But it was just month by
Good memory.
month, I think, and then specify which people.
So there's another thing that Joey and I have been discussing is because we do the base funding presentations here, and so the folks over in the centers have the opportunity to come here, but we don't require that. They can do it through distance, the distance ed program, so we'll bring in set up the TV and stuff. But we thought it would be nice to start thinking about getting the committee there to engage and get to know those programs, and nice for those people to see our commitment and our interest in maybe traveling to them. So we're going to be putting together a request for maybe trying to figure out a date or a couple date options so that committee members can sign up, and we'll organize a university vehicle, and we'll go over and actually see those programs so that you have a better idea. We're thinking, one for winter quarter, one for spring quarter, so if some folks can't do one, we're hoping they can do the other, but we will be looking for your guys' feedback of your schedules.
Derek?
So when you say the centers, you're talking about like our satellite campuses, right?
Our satellite campuses, plus because we have a lot of programs that are actually stationed at those satellite campuses. So for instance, the West Side Student Affairs, which is very similar to campus activities here, they do not only student programming, but they also provide services to our students over there, and it would be nice for folks to get to know them. We also have an equivalent of learning commons and advisors over there and such. So there's quite a few programs at centers, and we would like to encourage stronger relationships between the committee and those programs that are not able to come and visit with us more regularly, such as some of our other areas.
Any further questions? Derek?
I do have a question on the base funding program reviews. So when they come and they basically present like what it is that they've been doing and why how they've been spending this money, are we going to grill them?
You have the opportunity to respectfully ask questions. So it is like the way our policies are, it's a 10-minute presentation. You can vote to extend it if I have a hard time myself staying within the 10 minutes. I apologize in advance. But after they do their presentation, then we open it up for questions for 10 minutes so that people really have to get their curiosity, give them those opportunities to ask questions.
And we're going to do one of those a week, right?
Some of them might be two, depending on how our schedule, like if for some reason there's, like in the month of January, we didn't meet the first week, so we'll probably have two in one of those, during one of those.
Any
Then
further
a
questions?
minimum of one a week.
I'd like to recognize the gallery.
So, and again, one of the benefits of you asking questions is that it also prepares them in the next quadrennium when they're requesting funds, because you would be asking questions much like the students of the next years, so that they are thinking about the ways to make the program sustainable, so that when they do come for their next funding requests in the far off, you're preparing them. So you all are fortunate that you don't have to deal with that, although it's kind of fun, but it's arduous. Your questions help guide that now. So, and then some of our professors will still be around, and then, so that's kind of what happens every year.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Yeah, let's just be respectful of those groups. It's probably the biggest thing. So. Grill them though. You feel it. It's not me when I have to present. All right, we'll move on to section 10, other business communications received. Received none.
Reported in my.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to second call, public comment. Is there any public comment at this time?
I just need to mention that I won't be able to make it next time.
One second. All right. With section 12, I'd like to move to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
So moved.
Derek, second. Oh, thanks, Ashley. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Meeting adjourned at 6:41 p.m. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ashley.